Hey, hello, how are you? This is a show for everyone else. Instead of going after top 1% of the world, we dedicate this podcast to celebrate the lives of the unsung heroes and self-made artists. Hi there, this is Fei Wu reporting from Feisworld headquarters here in Boston. First of all, I'm really sorry that I'm actually late to deliver this episode. As some of you guys found out from earlier episodes that I've been traveling and on the road between September 6th through the 20th. And as you're listening to this, we're talking about year 2018. And the reason is that I have taken on, since the beginning of the year, something I would consider the biggest project in my lifetime so far. Perhaps if you are an entrepreneur and someone who's been working on massive projects such as a film or, I don't know, building something so grand, this may not come across as such a big project. For me, this docuseries, by the way, you probably notice that I used to call it a documentary, the Feisworld documentary, but now, based on the episodic approach, which is going to be 6 episodes, 12 to 14 minutes each, it's more accurate to call it a docuseries. So that's how I'm going to refer to this moving forward. And so I was on the road, traveling for about exactly 2 weeks, living from a suitcase. So for myself in my mid-30s right now, this was such a net new experience. I literally don't remember the last time that I actually did this with family or friends. And so if you're hearing about the documentary for the first time, well, hello, I probably should introduce myself. My name is Fei Wu, and I've been running my podcast since October 2014. The reason as to why I want to start this docuseries is because honestly, I wanted to challenge myself, and I really wanted to help people visualize the process of what I'm trying to do, who I am, what I'm trying to do. I love to have my listeners, which means you guys, to actually see some of these amazing people I encounter. Now, knowing that we're almost pushing 200 episodes at this point, really, we can't possibly invite every single guest to the show. So the way that we strategize with the docuseries is to invite somewhere between, 10 to 15 guests, and then having about 2 to 3 guests or so covering each topic. And the topics are crossing borders, mindset, entrepreneurship, live your work, live your art. So it's a somewhat of a vague timeline, and that's mapping to who I am and my own becoming as an immigrant, moving to America when I was 17 years old, and now in my mid-30s. So I've spent just about half of my lifetime in China versus here in the US. And mostly, all my adult life has been pretty much rooted in the US, but I still very much feel like a Chinese person. And the journey, by the way, I feel like this is a little report for many of you who have been following me on social media, upvoting and commenting, and I have never expected the level of engagement following my journey. I had a lot of doubts and insecurities about this because I finally got used to listening to my own voice, and I got really comfortable interviewing people from all walks of life. But, as a woman, as an Asian woman, to actually show my face and to sit there with these high profile folks and interviewing them under these huge lights and a cinematic camera, I wasn't emotionally fully prepared for. I don't think anybody is, unless you're Oprah or you're a TV personality, right? So I decided to challenge myself. And, before I started filming or going on the road, and I didn't really talk too much about how I felt, but my team, to give them a big shout out, my producer, Dan, my director, Ed, my PA, Rosie, and along the way, we had 2 separate sound engineers and 1 additional PA, Matt, and of course my editor for this docuseries, as well as for the past 2 years for my podcast, Herman. They've been my rock, and they really supported me through this whole journey. And I want to talk about the emotional side of things because as much as I mentioned the docuseries before I went on the trip, which was I think in a little bit in July and August, I never knew what the emotional labor actually felt like for this particular project. So, as we're traveling, I've quickly figured out that in my mind, I want to be my best self. I wanted to dress up and be comfortable and look and make sure whatever I'm wearing, however I'm behaving, it represents me, my team, my brand. And that in itself, it's stressful when I didn't know that we'll be, for example, renting the biggest van and literally just driving through the busiest streets of Manhattan and, with 700 pounds of equipment moving in and out of that van. And on top of that, myself or my team were sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night and in Airbnbs that we all shared. So, I was feeling very exhausted at the beginning. However, as soon as we hit the camera, we started the interview, I had this really weird transformation because I guess I'm working my own project and this is the first time that I had infinite energy. It would be around midnight. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and just felt like I was ready to go. And I was ready to talk to Seth Godin. I was ready to interview Mick Ebeling. I was ready to go. My team was snoozing away and they're really trying to get some rest. And at that part, I didn't quite expect at all. And so I want to share bits and pieces of my journey because as I've taken on this project, so many of you guys reach out to me about the fact that you also want to work on something similar. Perhaps that's not necessarily documentary or a docuseries, but something to put yourself out there, whatever it may be. Maybe you're starting a new podcast yourself, or you're co-hosting something, or you're starting your blog or your YouTube channel. What does that feel like? I think the emotional journey is something that a lot of people don't talk about. And it's honestly because we've all been so busy and sleeping so little. But I want to use this episode to capture all of that because I think I may just be gone. I may just forget the intricacies and these small moments that really made a big difference. So you may be wondering, so how many people we interviewed in a short 2 weeks. So I traveled to Vegas first to work with my team for a few days and kind of hone in on the story arc and all that, just finalize the details. And then we created a packing list. Then us, meaning the four of us, Dan, Ed, Rosie, myself, went on the road and we traveled to LA to shoot part of the docuseries with Mick Ebeling and Chris Voss. And these names also appeared on the podcast previously. After that, we took a flight. I believe the flight was at literally 7 a.m. in the morning. So we left our Airbnb at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock. We flew from LA to New York City. And we have to move into another Airbnb, get a rental car that is huge to actually fit all the equipment in. So we stayed in New York for about a week, a little over a week, including post-production. And there we interviewed Basila Bukoko, Sarah Cooper, Barry Alexander, Cosmo Bono, Dory Clark, and finally Seth Godin. And it was just phenomenal. And after we interviewed Seth Godin on our last day of the shoot, which was September 17th, me and my team stayed indoor nearly all day. We had this really cute Airbnb in City Island, New York. You probably never heard of it, but it's this tiny little island. And we found this Airbnb and we trapped ourselves indoors and went through editing post-production for just a single episode, which is still a rough cut at this stage, for 2 days. And it was so productive. And that was a transformational experience going from, wow, what are we doing? Do these points and these storylines actually cross and intersect, and do they make sense, to, wow, we're all sitting there kind of in shock to realize that we did this. And last but not least, I realized this project is much bigger than myself, than ourselves meaning collectively everybody who has been involved in this project. And I really hope I'll invite the world to take a look at it. And I can tell you how addictive it feels to want to do this again. And I feel like a big girl. I am looking through invoices. I'm contacting sponsors and I'm trying to apply for these festivals. So last but not least, for you, my listeners, thank you so much for believing in me, in us, and following our journey and then supporting me through these amazing messages through social media, through emails. I love you very much, and I hope to share more of this docuseries production process with you very soon, behind the scenes stuff. Last but not least, did I say that already? The week after this, which is next Friday, we'll have a Friday, September 28th. I'm excited to launch a brand new regular interview format episode of Feisworld with Jordan Harbinger. This is a very special milestone because Jordan left his previous show, started his new show just about 6 months ago called The Jordan Harbinger Show. And in a short few months, he received, I think, over 8 million downloads. And that journey is just phenomenal. So we talk about networking and how he's able to pivot. And I think it's a great lessons learned for any of us, who is going through transitions. And that's going to be a great story. And hope you'll join me then. For now, thanks so much. If you have any feedback, questions about the docuseries and anything else you would like to hear from me, my team, please drop me a note on social media or old-fashioned emails, always welcome. Feisworld.com. Remember the way I spell my name is F-E-I. Thanks so much. I will see you next week. Hi there, it's me again. I want to thank you very much for listening to this episode, and I hope you were able to learn a few things. If you enjoyed what you heard, it would be hugely helpful if you could subscribe to the Feisworld podcast. It literally takes seconds. If you're on your mobile phone, just search for Feisworld Podcast in the podcast app on iPhone or an Android app such as Podcast Addict and click subscribe. All new episodes will be delivered to you automatically. Thanks so much for your support.